for task 10, it wanted us to learn about any three rules that we wanted to, that wasn't covered in class, and to explain it, what's the purpose of it, and why we need it. So one of the rules that I chose was the identity creation rule. So definitely would go under the creation rule. Um, uh, And with something like this, you would use like an identity creation rule, really when there's not an existing identity that correlates with the account. And so with this rule, it's going to auto create an identity using like accounts data that it has. So it'll end up constructing the data based on the rule that you put in place. So, for instance, let me pull up. Okay, so this is just like a sample one that I got from SailPoint. But for uh, this identity creation rule, basically it showed that it was was concatenating the first and last names of the file that it got. And so it was getting the attributes of the first name and the last name, but then the identity was getting set to um, a string of the first and the last name put together. So it kind of um, does this auto creating of identities to ensure that every account from an authoritative source is going to be somehow represented in the identity IQ. Um, And then let's see, it maintains accurate identity governance and provisioning, as well as access reviews. Okay, another rule that I chose was the resource object customization rule. So over here under like customization rules, you could create one and put it here. And in here, the rule type is resource object customization. It will return a resource object. And so if you, so for, sorry, for a resource object customization, um, it's really used to modify or customize the resource object provided by a connector. And this happens before aggregation. Before that aggregation process begins, this customization is happening. So it's kind of adjusting um, like the data that's um, in your file or through your connector before it gets into Identity IQ. And then it's going to modify the attribute by adding new ones or possibly like flagging something so that it can ultimately change it. So one of the big reasons they use it is they said that um, some connectors directly supply the resource object without like built-in hooks for transformation. And so in these cases, this type of rule is going to like fill that gap. So it kind of ensures that every resource object is processed in like a consistent manner. And here, just quickly, also pull this from SailPoint, um, but just kind of an example of how the rule might be used. And it was just saying that if it had um, an attribute called member of, and if the groups were not equal to null, um, they were saying that, so if the group's not equal to null and the group starts with this CN domain admin, then it was going to put in an attribute for is admin true. So it's kind of like a transforming it. So if the transformation rule is not in place, then it has this customization that I can say, okay, if this is going to start with this domain admins, I know that I need to um, have an attribute that says that this person is an admin. So ultimately, just having this resource object customization rule, it's kind of essential for environments where the connectors don't offer those transformation hooks. And then it ensures that the data is correct in the correct format and enriched, if you will, as needed before Identity IQ performs any sort of correlation or provisioning. So my next rule that I chose was the map to resource object rule. Um, and I realized as I was getting into this that this is actually very similar to the last rule that I looked up, a little bit different though. So it is considered a transformation rule, but then the return type is still a resource object. So if I look back at that same um, code script that I had in the last rule, it kind of goes together. So I'll kind of talk about um, the transformation rule or the map to resource object rule first. So it kind of serves as a bridge between raw source data and it's usually in the form of like a delimited file or a JDBC source. And um, and then the standardized resource object format. So it converts any incoming map, like an account or group, into specifically a resource object. And that is obviously necessary for aggregation and correlation. And then it also allows for customization of any resource object after using the convenience method for the basic transformation that happens. Let's see. It's it kind of works like if you don't have these like a custom transformation method provided, then you have this default method. So if you look here, this resource object, so abstract connector default transformation, that is what is put in place, that default transformation object. Um, and then this is the same scenario as before, having an attribute of member of, and then finding one if it starts with the domain admin and saying, is admin true? So doing something like that would be like if I had to take in an HR system, exporting like their user data into a CSV file, and I was pulling that information in. I'm trying to import that data into SailPoint. Then the map to that resource object rule transforms like the rows from the CSV file, and it's represented as a map into a standardized resource object, if that makes sense. Um, And then additionally, they could check to see if the user is part of the admin group and mark them accordingly. So overall, this specific rule, um, you could just say it customizes any incoming data, and then it really ensures that the aggregation process has all of the necessary standardized information to accurately like correlate accounts with identities and enforce like access policies. And that's it.